Now, some of y'all can name every Real Housewife or even recite Dreams and Nightmares by Meek Mills. I mean, that is a classic. And even some of y'all can give me the starting lineup for the 1996 Chicago Bulls. But when I ask y'all to name me a city council member, crickets. And that's a problem because who impacts your life more or even first? The President of the United States or your city council? And if your answer to that was the President of the United States, I have some unfortunate news for you. And let's say you do know a city council member. Bet. Do you know how often they meet? Do you know what they voted on last month? Do you know what they're arguing about today? Exactly. Some of us can give more insight to Love Island and the cast versus the people that make decisions about what goes in our neighborhoods every day. But I'm not going to blame you. Here's my point. City council low-key runs your life. They vote on everything from libraries, public safety, zoning, police funding, all these things that impact you, and especially how your money gets spent. Yes, your money. So the people that you have no clue about, don't even know their names, are making decisions that will impact your life for the rest of your life, more than the politicians that we argue about on the internet. Here's the thing. I know everybody is up in arms about Congress, obsessed with what's happening in Washington, D.C., rightfully so. I know national headlines, they dominate the news. However, local government shows up at your door way quicker than the federal government. And welcome to Ashley Please, the podcast where I explain politics the same way I do in the group chat. Every week, we unpack the headlines, make sense of the nonsense, and explain how government actually works. We also give out an award, an Ashley Please award, to somebody that collectively made us say, girl, what are you doing? This is part civics class, part podcast, and fully unhinged. Let's get into it. Welcome to another episode of Ashley Please, part civics class, part podcast, and fully unhinged. I'm Ashley Munson, and as always, thank you for supporting. Thank you for watching on whatever platform you're watching on. If you haven't had a moment, go over to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube to subscribe. This week's episode is all about local politics, if you couldn't tell. I know people are obsessed with midterms in Congress and everything chaotic happening in Washington, D.C., rightfully so. But remember, if you don't remember anything else from this podcast, local politics impacts you first. I said local politics impacts you first. I said local politics impacts you first. That was me doing the chicken hair for those who are listening virtually. That is one thing I want you to know because your rent, your neighborhood, public safety, parks, libraries, all these things are city council matters. Now, here's my preface. When we talk about local politics, and I'm in Chicago, so I would be remiss if I didn't mention the Chicago mayoral race that is approaching in 2027, which is going to be a dumpster fire, in my opinion. Nobody asked me, but kind of did because you're here listening. And when I think about what's approaching, I have several thoughts that I'm going to share in no particular order. A, have y'all heard of the Chicago Flips Red crew? There's a group that is essentially trying to flip Chicago red, which is baffling in itself. However, there are two members from that group that are running for office. One is running for mayor, Danielle Carter Walters. She's running for mayor, which would be interesting. And then the second person is Christian Maxwell, who has challenged Congressman Jonathan Jackson and has gotten Stephen A. on board to try to get him to debate her. Have y'all seen Head of State? It's one of my favorite movies. Mace Gilliam, Chris Rock's character, is essentially trying to run for office, and the Democratic Party picks him because they don't think he would get it, whatever. But there comes a point in the movie where the president is ignoring Mace or Chris Rock's character. So him and his brother, Bernie Mac's character, harass the president to try to get them to debate. I mean, they show up on every news outlet, the radio, walking down the street. I thought I told you that we won't stop. I thought I told you that we won't stop. They're showing up to make the president want to debate them. Bring me back to Christian Maxwell. Homegirl and Stephen A. are Mace Gilliam and his brother, trying to get the president, i.e., Jonathan Jackson, to debate them, which is crazy. But beneath all the jokes about flipping Chicago red, which I still have a few more thoughts on, I think they do highlight some frustrations that Chicago folks have, right? Public safety, violence, affordability. These are all real issues that not only open up to the field for groups like Chicago Flips Red, for more conservative voices to join in the conversation, but also we need to talk about some of the career candidates this opens up the field for. So if we start with Chicago Flips Red and my question marks, one, I don't know if I was frustrated with the Democratic Party, I would go to Republican, especially these versions of Republican. 1+1 has to equal 2, and that doesn't even come close to 2. Second, the last Republican mayor we had was corrupt. Historians quote him as supporting organized crime with Al Capone. Not only that, people in his administration, judges, police officers, were all quoted as taking bribes. So did William. William was his name. He took bribes too. So if that is our reference for a Republican mayor, why would we want another Republican mayor? Do I think Democrats need to be held accountable? Absolutely. I think there needs to be real discussions about why Chicago and the state of Illinois is majority blue and we have some real fixes. I think some people are making strides. I think Pritzker is making strides. I think we have a lot more work to do, especially on the local level. But flipping Chicago red and the way they're going about it is wow. Go with God. Also, when I think about career candidates in this mayoral race that's happening, what is a career candidate? Let me start there. These are people that run for office for a living. If you're in Chicago, that is, i.e., Willie Wilson. Gotta say his name like that. Do I support Willie Wilson? Not necessarily. Do I support him giving out gas and groceries to families in need? Absolutely, because when gas hit $7 for premium, I almost considered going to them gas stations myself, bro. Because what are we doing? Why are we doing this? So I support him meeting real needs. That does not take away the fact that he is a career politician. Another one locally, Bob Ferretti. He ran for office. He's been running for office since Simba left Proud Rock. Where did that come from? Him and Willie have been running for office and not winning for a very long time. On a federal level, we have Jill Stein, who has ran for president 3 times as the Green Party's representative and lost. I feel like she goes underground like a groundhog and then pops back up. If she pops back up in 2028, somebody owes me a Starbucks gift card because I called it. Back to the point of the story. This mayoral race brings up groups like Chicago Flips Red. More broadly, my point is, brings up groups that have real interests, whether that's tourism, business, environment. You'll see a lot of these groups start to pop up and ask these different candidates as they start to flood the field about if they're going to support them. I think we should also pay attention to the unions and who they support. These career candidates are going to start popping up. Some of the names we know. I think there may be other people from different offices, i.e., people that have ran for Senate that it didn't work, run for Chicago mayor. So local politics is important, and I think we're going on a roller coaster as we approach this next election. Now I want to hop into the no jargon zone where we take one concept and explain it civically and what it means to the communities we serve. Okay, for today's topic, it is what is city council? How does it actually work and what do they control? Okay, city council is a legislative body for local government. Think about it as Congress before the city. These folks are elected by a district, meaning they are a representative at the council table for you. They represent your needs. You are their constituents and you vote them into office. Okay. City council meets about twice a month, sometimes more. Their meetings are public. You can watch them online, you can go in person, and they have time for comment, which is a little bit different than a congressional floor or even state general assemblies. You have time to comment. If you are not from Chicago, Google George Blakemore. He is, quote unquote, Chicago's most concerned citizen. He is a great example of utilizing the comment period. I've seen other interesting examples like the school board guy that used Carisha spend that as a way to describe how the board members are spending money carelessly. I've seen Hurricane Chris, this is not local, this is state government, sing Halle Berry on the Louisiana State Assembly floor. I'm not making any of this up. You can actually Google all of this. It would actually really entertain you. But I am saying people have used comment periods or the section of that meeting very creatively. I'm not going to tell you how to use your comment section, but I will say we should probably go to city council meetings and comment more to give people feedback on how we're feeling and what kind of job they're doing in office. So, what does city council actually control? This is where you should sit your phone down and listen attentively. City council controls the budget. They control property taxes and how local revenue gets spent. That means police department funding, parks, roads, transit, infrastructure. All these things are important when it comes to city council. They also control zoning. So if you wonder, why is this building next to a school? That's zoning. Or if you're wondering why housing isn't affordable, that's also zoning. They approve every variance, they approve every development plan. And they approve or deny contracts, which is also important to award or into an area. They set local ordinances. So those are local laws, everything from like noise limitations to tenant protections. I wish they had something for crazy neighbors because I have one of those. Sorry. So we talked about local government and why it's important, but I also want to highlight why turnout is so low in some of these local elections. Because y'all thought turnout for midterms was crazy. Turnout for local elections sometimes reaches 8%. So it's not during usually a presidential year. It's in March instead of November. Runoffs can go to April. Runoffs are when the race is not decided, when the elections are in March. So then they have another contest with the top two candidates usually, depending on what state you're in and what uh primary and election process you have. But it's usually in the spring, it's not in the winter or the fall. And it's just a Tuesday in March. And some cities, depending on where you live at, advertise it. Some don't. And some focus, they bank on y'all not paying attention so they can get in office easily. But these elections, their turnout is way lower than midterms, which is crazy because if you followed me for some time, you would know one of my phrases is that democracy is working exactly as it's intended to work. It wasn't made for us to understand. And I think people benefit off us not understanding what's happening. Okay, so we talked about local government. Today, I want to bring you all a headline that ties in local government with local politics and why local organizing is still important. So last week, Millet Kairos, which is a 29-year-old woman, first time candidate, a Democratic socialist, PhD student, former attorney, beat a 30-year incumbent, Democratic incumbent. Her name is Diana DeJet. 30 years in office, first of all, is pretty wild. Give it some more context. When DeGette was first starting in office, maybe 4 months in, Kairos wasn't even born yet. We got to start talking about term limits. No matter Democrat, Republican, Independent, we got to start having real conversations about that because there's no way you have been in office almost longer than I've been alive. No one sees a problem with that? Sorry. So this is a national story because it happened in Denver. So people are highlighting it as a ideology story. What do I mean? They're deeming her a democratic socialist because of her policies and her progressive, super progressive policies. However, because Zoran Mudani, who is Batman in my book, has proven himself as a really good politician so far, achieving all the campaign promises that he has made, I think to scare people away, they have been painting Democrats as communists and people who believe in sharing resources and nobody owning anything, and shared community is trying to paint a picture to those that are more conservative that if you vote this way, this is how the world will end up. So back to Kairos. She falls in that category with Zoran. And these upsets of democratic socialists are happening over the country. So it was New York, California, and now we're in Denver. And so people have been painting this as an ideology story. Focus on the democratic socialists. I want to focus on infrastructure. Kairos had a really tight local game. What do I mean? I mean that local politics is still important in campaigning, even at a state or federal level. Kairos went to the Denver Democratic Party Assembly, which is a local party meeting. She gained 67% of the delegate vote. That alone could have got DeJet out the race. But that means to get that support, she has been working locally, which also proves that if you work locally, you work to build this rapport, this support, national support is more likely to come, especially if you are in a congressional race. So that means what it says to me, I'm not a political strategist. Actually, I am, but I'm not here in that capacity. What I would say is while we are observing mayoral races, even though that's not a congressional race like this, we need to look at the local game. Who is the mayor talking to? Who is he being supported by? What groups is he meeting with? What's happening on the local ground game? And I will say in Chicago, there used to be more proactive organizations. So automatic offices had organizations of people that were willing to walk, do things politically for them. I know it's a different time and people need to be paid, but some organizations still exist in Chicago. Maybe not as strong or maybe not as prevalent, but they are still existing. And when those organizations still exist, those local organizations still have power. So I would take a step back if I cared to observe the mayoral race and figure out where should any candidate for mayor start if we're talking about locally. Anyway, back to Kairos. I think the national coverage came after she had local support on deck. So she had the Justice Democrats, Bernie supporting organizations follow her, but this was after the local organizations or support was secured, which also shows me that while federal and state are important, the people that live around you that have real issues on a local level sometimes control what's happening. And now for the Ashley Please Award, I have to admit this award was initially going to Mitch McConnell this week. But when I recorded this podcast episode, I went to edit and realized the sound was off the entire time. So maybe that was God's way of saying, Ashley, please. Or maybe the universe didn't want me to get canceled and I'm just starting this podcast. Either way, instead of a person this week, the Ashley Please Award is going to a decision. That decision is the Chicago parking meter deal. Now, if Chicago had a Mount Rushmore of political mistakes, that would definitely get a statue. Let me give y'all some context. Back in 2008, Chicago was in a budget crisis. Sounds a little bit familiar year after year. However, instead of raising taxes or making long-term spending cuts, we decided to enter a parking meter deal with a private company for 36,000 meters for 75 years. Y'all heard what I said. That lease is 75 years. And in exchange, we got $1.15 billion. And that almost immediately went to where the budget holes were to ensure we had enough money to do what we needed to do. Now, here's the problem. One, when a parking meter is removed, say for a bike lane, for construction, or even for a festival, Chicago has to compensate the private company. So we're paying money on top on money. The psalmist said racks on racks on racks. That's what we're doing. Secondly, when the investigator general reviewed the deal, he found that Chicago undervalued this deal by not hundreds, not even thousands, hundreds of millions of dollars, y'all. Do you know what Chicago? I was gonna say, y'all know what I can do with $1 million? I mean, I think y'all have heard me say that. You know what Chicago can do with more money? I.e., fix these damn potholes. That's for one. Sorry, I had a personal vendetta against the potholes. This deal will last 75 years, meaning that somebody that is born will get Social Security before seeing these parking meters go away. And I think that's a problem. Furthermore, this is highlighting the importance of local government because what did we learn today? Local government impacts us first. Local politics impacts us first because it does. It does. And some of the people that voted on this years ago made the decision to have this parking meter deal in place because local government is at the foundation of this decision. Most people who couldn't name their alderman back in 2008 voted people in that made this decision. So I digress. That's been Ashley Please and the Ashley Please Award for this week. My call to action is Google what your city council has done this week, what they voted on. We can talk about in Chicago how they had a transportation committee hearing and the aldermen, the city council people did not show up. Well, they showed up, but not enough of them. They didn't have a quorum. A quorum is essentially the number of people you need to start a meeting. They didn't show up. And they've been asking the CTA to come and speak to them quarterly. They even passed an ordinance for this to happen, and the fourth president didn't, but you have the interim president that came to answer questions, but y'all didn't show up. That's something I learned. That's something that you can research and learn for yourself. That is the call to action this week. I'm Ashley Munson, and do something with what you just learned.